All right, I don't want to delay this too much longer here. Welcome everyone. What we're going to do today is going to be a really informal discussion based on XG Firewall version 18. We're going to do a deep dive into the brand new DPI engine. To go over that with us today, I have actually brought along Karanthi. He is going to go and in depth inside of the SSL inspection, show us how to get that set up in there, and talk about the underlying architecture as it results to the FastPath technology that's increasing the performance in the version 18 firewalls. With that, I also want to go ahead and discuss a promo that we are running towards the end of the year here. So coming into the next slide, we have our XG MSP Connect promotion. This is going to be 50% off XG and APX hardware and software for orders that qualify over $5,000. So the normal discounts that you get when you register a firewall, you'll get 40 points. You are now going to get 50% off now throughout the end of our fiscal year, which is March 31st. So, or March 27th on there. So definitely take advantage of this promotion inside of your organization and for your customers. We'll go over this again here at the end as well. In order to get access to that promotion, what you need to do is email your MSP teams. What you're going to do is email either East MSP, Central MSP, or West MSP at sophos.com. Those teams will be happy to get that promotion in place for you and get that order processed. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Karanthi and let him run through this.
Thanks,
Karanthi,
Steve.
I'm going to make you the presenter. And again, guys, feel free to put questions in the GoToWebinar box. We'll be happy to answer them throughout the webinar. This is going to be a really informal discussion. We want to have a lot of questions in there, anything you guys need answered.
All right, thanks, Steve. Myself, Karanthi, and I'm part of the Global Solutions team here at Sophos. So in the next 30 minutes, we'll discuss about the architecture, SSL Inspection Engine, and also the new threat intelligence reporting and the Sophos Central reporting and management. We'll just go through a glimpse of that. So what's new with version 18? Perhaps the most exciting innovation is the new extreme packet processing architecture that you see on the screen. It's not the most visible change for you from a configuration standpoint, that's for sure, but it's an important one, and all the nuts and bolts lie on the architecture change that we made from 17.5 to V18. So what you see here is a high-level description of our new extreme packet processing architecture. There are three components here they all work together. Of course, the firewall stack provides the connection management, the firewall rule lookup, like whether to allow, block, or process the traffic through the DPI engine, etc. So the new DPI or Deep Packet Inspection Engine provides all the security scanning in V18. That includes IPS, web, antivirus, application control, and SSL. And the last component here is the network flow FastPath that can help accelerate the traffic through the system in line speeds. So when it comes to how this works, so when a connection first establishes, the initial connection is processed by the firewall stack that looks up the firewall rules and policies, and it makes the decision whether to allow, block, or apply security scanning to this connection. If there are no security policies applied to the firewall rule, the traffic will no longer go through the DPI engine, and it actually directly egresses out of the firewall. Now, because the security policies are not being applied, the DPI engine is completely out of the picture and it's bypassed. And this is the final state of the data path the connection takes to achieve FastPath. So this is true for both 17.5 and V18. And the firewall stack will actually program the FastPath engine that will have all the necessary tools and information to handle the connection. So the first connection, the SYN going from one direction to the other, and the SYNAC coming back, the firewall stack will program the FastPath that here is the firewall rule, and I don't need to see this connection anymore. You can handle it from yourself from here on.
Hey, Karanthi, real quick, just a couple of questions that are coming in,
Sure.
Pertinent to this and pertinent to the FastPath technology on there. how does the DPI and SSL inspection affect ISP speed for the customer? So this is probably going to more talk about the visual representation of somebody taking a look at something like speedtest.com.
Yes, so I have that addressed on the coming slides. How do we handle the fast path when there is an SSL? So the SSL inspection will have the same impact as it had in the 17.5. Of course, when you are inspecting traffic, it takes, if a connection has been inspected by the SSL engine, it has to be intercepted for the duration of the connection. That takes a little bit of CPU resources that'll have a little bit impact on the performance. But the percentage of the for a downgrade of the performance, something that we would like to publish it shortly. So we don't have those numbers yet for the SSL inspection, but yeah, there will be some impact on the ISP bandwidth with this. But still, that's covered by the FastPath packet processing architecture.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so in this second use case, we'll just, if traffic requires security scanning, it will be forwarded to the DPI engine for scanning purposes. So if the traffic flow is encrypted or subjected to inspection according to SSL inspection rules, this will be decrypted. So the DPI engine is responsible for all security scanning and enforcement, like IPS, web, antivirus, app control, and it uses a proxy-less approach like V17, and it has a high-performance DPI engine. So what you're seeing here is that we would consider the normal path, and it's only used on the initial few packets. And after that, the firewall stack can step out of the way. So we are technically removing a kernel path off the data path, so it's no longer in place. And it can instruct the fast path to forward the traffic directly to the DPI engine. It no longer needs the firewall stack to forward the traffic to the DPI engine. So this frees up the firewall stack to handle new connections, and this alone can actually significantly improve a lot of performance, and it decreases the latency. Now, this is the final path that we achieve with the when the DPI inspection or SSL inspection is in place. Now, when there is a stream that is considered secure, this might answer one of the questions just popped up. So, for example, you're watching Netflix or YouTube as an example. So that is something that we consider a secure stream, because the IPS engine will actually trust the certificate that comes from the Netflix or YouTube, for example, and it no longer require any sort of inspection because your file matches a trusted traveler signature from Sophos Labs, and the network fastpath can be directed to accelerate the flow through the system with ultra low latency at a wire speed. So part of the fastpath offloading technique also involves our Sophos Labs signatures that get updated with the XG firewall, and these heavy traffic, which is always trusted, can significantly improve the performance of the firewall, so it can be used for other purposes. Now, let's take a look at the different components involved here. So I'm talking about slow path, fast path, DPI engine. What does these components have? So this is the data path, and this is the core software that moves the packets through the XG firewall. So the data plane primarily runs on 3 domains: the XG fast path, the SFOS kernel, which is the slow path, and the SFOS user space, which is the DPI engine that houses all your TLS encryption, app control, IPS, back filtering, and also your AV scanning as well. Now, the primary firewall logic occurs in this SFOS kernel, which is the kernel space. And this logic determines how to forward each and every packet here and how to apply the firewall policy, and also performs the ingress decapsulation and egress encapsulation for IPs like VPNs, and also checks the denial of service and the quality of service as well. Now, most of this processing is stateless, so which means every it gets applied in full on each packet. So applying full firewall processing to every packet in a given connection, that can be wasteful usage of resources. And we would like to see in the future slides like how this is saved and how can we save these processing cycles by offloading the traffic to FastPath. And the DPI engine here, it has all the bells and whistles that are needed for the security services. It contains data plane logic that inspects any traffic from layer 4 or higher. And the virtual fastpath supports the programmable data counters. So this is something that happens in the background behind the scenes, where the fastpath gets programmed by the slow path to offload a connection to go through the fastpath. So let's take a look at different scenarios here. So the pure firewall data flow. So this slide shows the path that all traffic for any given connection will take. Now, when XG operates in pure firewall mode, that means no DPI engine is in place. So the DPI engine is completely bypassed. So this is the initial state of the connection. So traffic comes into the interface, it goes out to the denial of service check, VPN check, and also it looks up for the firewall rules, completely bypasses the DPI engine and egresses out. Now, what happens after that? So after the firewall has seen one packet on each direction of a flow, it knows how to treat all future packets from that connection. So what it does, it allows the firewall to program a connection cache to your XG fastpath. So it will tell the fastpath how to treat the future packets in the same connection. So what happens after this? This is the final state of the flow for any given connection, which doesn't involve DPI. So the XG fastpath is able to fully process the packet from start to finish without consuming additional the PCI bandwidth and x86 CPU cycles or any memory bandwidth at all. So this is how the fastpath processes the offload, the traffic offload at line reads times. The next thing is how does it behave when you have app control in place? So that's the default setting in the firewall. So when you bring up an XG firewall, it creates an application control signature detection is automatically in place. So it demonstrates how the firewall offloads the traffic when app control is in place. So app control requires inspecting all the traffic from layer 7, and it uses the DPI engine. So initially the traffic traverses through the slow path, and then it realizes that the DPI engine needs to be engaged here because app control is enabled, application identification is enabled. So the DPI engine will return the traffic. So the slow path will forward the traffic to the DPI engine here. And this is the second step that happens. So while the DPI engine is still trying to identify the traffic, the slow path forwards the traffic to the fast path, so it offloads the traffic to the fast path. So in this case, so the kernel is completely, or the slow path is completely out of the picture, and the fast path directly interacts with the DPI engine here. And once the app gets classified, so the app control no longer needs to be part of it. So it can make a decision whether to allow or block the application, so it no longer needs to know further part of that connection. So it can automatically identify the connection. It can offload the traffic after the application has been identified. So this is the final state if the app control is enabled on the XG firewall. So you can still see the traffic is going through the fast path without going to the DPI engine, even after the app control is enabled. So that's one of the biggest differentiators in V18 from 17.05. Now we have IPS and app control enabled with TLS inspection turned on, or TLS inspection enabled. So in this case, all the data plane subsystems are involved in the traffic processing. So you can see the DPI engine serves as the interface between the kernel and as well as the fast path. So the initial connection here, as usual, goes through the slow path, submitted to the DPI engine. So here, the TLS inspection is enabled. So the rule of thumb here is any traffic when TLS inspection is enabled will be subjected to TLS check to see if there is a client hello in the TLS traffic. So to see if that traffic really has SSL component in it, and then it sends over to the IP app control.
Hey,
now,
Kranthi, do we have a moment for some questions in here?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, because I know these are piling up on here. People are loving what you got going on, and they're asking tons and tons of questions. So real quick on here, where does this flow, where does NAT happen in this flow?
So the NAT happens, the NAT happens on the slow path, but once the flow has been classified, the NAT is also programmed in the fast path. So the NAT is something that we did not showcase here. That's a great question. It happens in the slow path.
Okay. is FastPath enabled by default? I believe the answer to this
That
is yes, as long as you have that
correct.
DPI engine enabled on there.
No, the FastPath has nothing to do with the DPI engine, but it's enabled by default on the XG firewall. It's the same command that you can do from the CLI, where you can enable or disable FastPath on XG firewall.
Perfect.
So
While we're
if
talking
the
about,
DPI engine is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
okay, while we're talking about the FastPath on there, does FastPath honor the application whitelisting and exemptions on there? So, for
Yes,
example,
it
if you
does.
had
So,
P2P applications and download applications all allowed already.
yes, it does. If an application has been completely, I would say whitelisting, application whitelisting only happens after identifying the application. So for example, so you have a P2P application, so we require at least 8 packets on each direction to be processed by the app control to identify that, hey, this is a P2P application. And post which, once it's whitelisted, it goes through the FastPath. So the rule of thumb is quite simple. So any traffic for identification purposes has to go through DPI engine, whether it's action depends on allow or block, it always go through the FastPath. So if it's blocked, it's terminated from there. If it's allowed, it goes to FastPath.
Okay, perfect. And while we're on FastPath, does FastPath increase the performance all between point-to-point VPN connections?
That's a good question. So point-to-point VPN, we still have to offload the VPN connections into the FastPath. So I don't have a particular date on when we can actually offload the IPsec VPNs, but that's actually part of our roadmap.
Okay, perfect. So coming soon.
Yep.
All right, I think that's all for now. I'll let you continue on. I'll continue hitting these on the back end.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So going ahead with the app control enabled and TLS inspection enabled. So the TLS inspection here, after one packet from each direction, the firewall now offloads the connection to the FastPath here. And this is the new flow. This is how it looks like. Now, in this scenario, the traffic is not encrypted by TLS, so because it didn't find anything with SSL component on it. So the customer has the TLS rules will now, the TLS engine is completely skipped in the next stage, where the traffic will be checked against the application identification. Once the app is identified, when the flow is safe, the traffic will be sent out. So these applications are provided by Sophos Labs. So these signatures are some of them which are trusted by us. And any signature of this kind gets triggered, which indicates the firewall really trusts that flow, and it actually forwards the traffic to the FastPath without being forwarded to the DPI engine. So in here, we are saving a ton of CPU cycles when you compare it with 17.5, where every packet in your Netflix and YouTube has to undergo IPS scanning, where it was not needed in previously. Now, we'll go through this scenario where all DPI services with TLS inspection is enabled. So we will have even the AV scanning in this particular example. So in this configuration, the DPI services actually are turned on, and the slow path forwards the traffic to the DPI engine. It checks for TLS traffic. It always goes for IPS and app control identification, and actually carves the file. If the return traffic coming from the internet has a file on it, it actually downloads the file, carves the file into the file system, and submits it to the antivirus for further scanning. So which means in this case, if the connection doesn't consist of TLS and the app is identified, and you can see that in the next stage, there's no file in the AV to scan. That means in this example, the traffic will be completely offloaded in the next stage to the FastPath. So no TLS enabled, no application has been identified, and there is no AV to scan, which means the DPI engine will be completely out of the picture. Now, this example is really important because we have the TLS inspection, which is mandatory. So initial connection flows through all the data path components here. So traffic submitted to DPI engine, TLS is in place, and app control is detecting the applications. So the first step, the flow gets classified and goes to the FastPath, and the traffic now gets submitted to the TLS engine because this has a valid TLS component on this, the XG need to inspect the traffic to both protect it and also categorize the traffic. And since the traffic is this has a TLS connection, the DPI engine must modify the traffic in order to carry out the man-in-the-middle inspection in the traffic. And however, once the TLS connection has been slightly modified, the firewall must continue to modify the traffic throughout the lifetime of the connection, or the connection will be aborted. So that's one of the places. So once the second stage is where the app gets identified, now the app control is completely out of the picture. So it's only the TLS engine that is in place between the fast path. So every connection, every packet in that connection has to go to the TLS engine, which is mandatory. And this is the only case where the fast path is only partially offloaded, where your SSL inspection is being performed by the firewall. So that should answer one of the initial questions that was asked. And what has changed from 17.5? So most of the firewall logic remains the same, and the IPS packet delivery used to happen from kernel to the user space, wherein in V18, the NIC can directly deliver the package to DPI engine. And also, there are some major upgrades happen to the web filtering, where we still retain the existing behavior of proxy-based filtering, which is also part of the user space. But now web filtering is now embedded within the SNOT, and also we detect web and TLS and TCP connections. So we don't go by fixed ports on 80 and 443 only. So any custom ports that we see TLS traffic, we intercept it. All right, so let's get to this enough of the PowerPoint. So Steve, if you have more questions, I can answer them at this point.
Yeah, let's answer a couple of these here. I'm doing a pretty good job keeping on top of them. We have a question about upgrading from XG v17 5.9, and will your current settings stay in place, or will you have to reset them up? To answer that one, guys, everything will stay in place. If you're currently set up for the SSL inspection in the web filtering, it will continue to be set up on the SSL inspection for the proxy mode filtering on there, just as you have it set up today. It will give you the option to go in at some point and convert that over to the DPI engine. And we can show you the differences on those when we actually dive into a firewall rule.
That's correct. So let me take you, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, unless you had anything more to add to that one.
No.
Okay.
If you have more questions, let's answer.
Yeah,
that.
so well, before we dive into that, any minimum model requirement for real-world use for the new DPI engine? So can you talk a little bit about kind of anything from the XG86 on up of where you would see, where would we start to put the DPI in there? And will the XG86 and 106 support it just fine?
Yeah, the XG86 and 106 should support it just fine. So any changes that we made to the XG firewall is not dependent on the model specific. So unlike other vendors, we don't really make a particular feature out to just one particular model or a bunch of models. So all the features that we have is subjected to all the models.
Perfect. Let me see here. These guys are these are coming in fast and furious. Okay, let's continue on. I'll continue to answer these.
Sure, absolutely. So let's get to the UI part of it, which is the most exciting part of this 1 hour session. So we'll talk about the SSL inspection first. So you must see there are a couple of widgets that came in with the V18. So the SSL TLS connections and also the decrypted sessions here as well. So let's dive into what we have inside the SSL TLS inspections. So this is kind of a place where your customers' blind spot when it comes to SSL traffic gets reduced, or you get an idea how much of a blind spot you have in the network. So this gives you like a real-time lookup of what's happening, how much of traffic has been decrypted and how much of them is unencrypted, and also all the errors. So SSL inspection is always never a perfect thing. So you always have some sites that does mutual authentication, some have PIN certificates, all these come in way, and you need to know what needs to be bypassed of the SSL inspection. So this gives you an idea if something's failing, so actually Firewall gives a pretty darn good reason as to why this is failing. So you can actually see that this is because, so Kevin Peterson here has been trying to access xfinity.com and it failed because of unknown CA alert. So that's the kind of logging in depth that we can offer from the UI standpoint. So you can also exclude that straight from the UI. So you can just go to domain, or you can actually block the subdomain, or you can actually, exclude the entire domain or the web category involved. So that's the kind of depth that you can get right off the control center with this new version. Now, outside that, so how do you build the SSL policy? So what needs to be done? So what's different from V18? That's the question in mind. So we need to understand that SSL TLS rules has been decoupled from the existing firewall rules. Now, there is a slight bit of confusion around the community here as to comparing with the existing web proxy. So there are certain features which are available for the web proxy. So certain characteristics the web proxy has is because it's terminating the connection, it can modify the connection. So certain things like safe search enforcement, all these things can be done through the web proxy. But how do you enable the DPI engine? How do you not use the web proxy is by unchecking these two boxes right on the firewall rule under the web filtering. So by default, when you enable the web filter, the web policy, your DPI engine is in place, and your AV scanning and also your sandbox, all this happen through your DPI engine or connected to DPI engine, and also your existing web proxy. So we have a little tooltip here that can explain as to why to choose DPI engine versus web proxy. So if you guys are confused, you can click on this and that gives you a pretty good explanation as to what approach one should take. So enabling this can only filter 80 and 443 traffic. Anything custom port, like if the firewall detects a TLS traffic on 4433, it'll still get redirected to the DPI engine. So if you guys want to use the TLS rules, uncheck these from the firewall rules. And going back to the firewall rules, we have an SSL TLS Inspection Rules here, which are dedicated just like the firewall rules. These are prioritized, and these can be, you can also go with the preference on whatever the rule sits on top, takes the precedence. Now, because we have an exclusion by website, we need some exclusions for SSL inspection because no application is perfect. Some applicants send their certificates with the self-signed CA, and also we have mutual authentication like ADP, etc. Now, there are some global settings where you can actually select the re-signing CA, and we also support the elliptical curve certificate authority as well with V18, which was not there in 17.05. And these are global settings. So what needs to be done with some deprecated SSL protocols like 2.0 and 3.0? We still detect them, but we don't really block, or we don't really inspect them, but we leave it to the administrator what you need to do with the SSL 2.0, 3.0. And if there is a SSL, if there's a compression enabled on the client hello, the firewall is capable of detecting it. But when there's a compression enabled, it adds complexity when you're doing a man in the middle. So we would leave it to the administrator to allow without decryption or to drop the traffic or reject it. And each appliance has its own SSL connection limit because it has its own resource which is totally dependent on how many connections each firewall can process. So we have that defined as well. Now, TLS 1.3, we are the second firewall in the market to actually do the TLS 1.3 native decryption. So, and also, if someone is more concerned about doing native TLS 1.3 decryption, which I don't see a reason why, you can always downgrade to TLS 1.2 and decrypt the traffic. Now, if something goes wrong, you need to have a plug to disable the SSL inspection. So you can see here. So if you enable the SSL encryption, something goes wrong, you have users freaking out. So you can actually go ahead and disable the SSL. This is a plug where you can pull off if you want to disable SSL decryption and on a global level. Now, the SSL rules are quite simple. The way you create one, it's simple as how you create a firewall rule. Now, you have an action for each of the SSL policy. we do it by source zone and the destination zones, just like how you do the firewall rules. You can always apply all your objects here for source and destination networks. We attach the identity aspect to the SSL policies as well, services, and also by web categories. And the bells and whistles of this particular policy lies in the decryption profile. You can either create a profile from here, or under the profiles, system profiles, you can just start a new decryption profile. Let me just get you through the decryption profile here. So what we have here is one of the biggest changes with 17.5 is you can have multiple decryption profiles. So if you have a customer who needs to re-sign certificates, multiple CAs. So for example, a segment of the network needs to be signed with one particular CA, and another segment needs to be signed with another CA. You have that with multiple profiles you can add. So what it does, it simply reissues the server certificate, and it re-signs it with the CA. Now, the outside the global settings, you can also override the global settings with your own decryption profile setting local to that. So deprecated SSL protocol, compression, TLS rules, TLS connections limit exceeds, unrecognized cipher suites, what needs to be done. And I would say the guts of the policy lies here. Now, we kind of offload the browser errors where most users don't even understand those browser errors nowadays. So we wanted to offload those errors and put it on the firewall. So if the firewall detects an invalid date or expired certificate or self-sign, untrusted issue or revoked certificate, or if the common name of the certificate mismatches with the server name SNI on the request on the client hello, the firewall you can actually simply block that or reject that as well. And you can also select the minimum RSA key size that is needed, and you can select the minimum and maximum TLS versions that the engine can decrypt. At the same time, some weak ciphers can also be blocked. To certain compliances does not allow weak ciphers like 3DES, RC4. All these are blocked for compliance purposes. So you can certainly build out your policies based on that, and you can reject and notify, which presents a block screen to the end user when these are blocked for these valid reasons. So that's just how simple you can configure your SSL TLS inspection rules. There's not much outside deploying your certificate using a group policy. Everything else is taken care of by itself by just a simple firewall rule. And like I said, I just showcased you the log viewer where you can actually just open up the SSL logs and you can kind of exclude those, even for those successful decrypt attempts, you can still see the logging for that as well. If there was anything that failed, you can actually see why it failed is because there's an unknown CA here. So that is what we have with SSL, and this is something that we have a lot more roadmap to come up with SSL inspection. This is just what we've done here, only 50% of what we intend to do with this awesomeness. So any questions here, Steve, you can address before we move to the threat intelligence reporting?
Oh yes, you are welcome to pull them up as well because they're coming in faster than I can answer them. Wow. So we did have one question come in on, and it's a little off to the side of this, and there's plenty of other ones to do with the SSL certificate on there as well. So let's cover the SSL first, since we just covered that. Does the SSL certificate still need to be pushed out to the workstations just like the old web proxy, and why?
That is correct, because it still does a man in the middle, and the CA that re-signs the server certificate has to be trusted by your workstations. So you still need to push out the certificate, the SSL scanning CA out to your workstations. And there are better ways to do it. If you have a Microsoft certificate CA server here, which by default pushes the trust the CA, you can also use that in your workstations, which eliminates the the whole process of pushing out the certificates. So we always give the users the best methods to implement the SSL scanning.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So on that, we do have the new engine in there, which if we can verify and go through with the new TLS 1.3, Obviously that is going to go take that path over decrypting and being the man in the middle. But for those websites that we cannot get in there and verify using that method, that's where that decrypt comes in, where that man in the middle. We had a question on there if you can use a valid SSL CA on there. If you're using GoDaddy or any of those are not going to issue you a CA, but just as Corinthia was saying, if you have Active Directory in your environment and you can set up a Microsoft CA for your environment, which you should have on there anyway, you can absolutely import those certificates into the Sophos and have those used when rewriting. That way it's already on all of your domain devices.
Exactly. So because no public CA is going to share their private key to you, because it's what they don't really expose their private key. So we have to use a Microsoft subordinate CA to do it, or the default CA present in the firewall.
Okay, and just to answer a couple of questions on here in regards to support for XG version 18. There's been a couple of questions on there for those. XG 85 and 105, those will not be supported with XG version 18. That is the reason why earlier this year we released XG 86 and 106. There is a requirement with version 18 for a 4 gig of RAM. With that said, 17.5 is not going anywhere. Actually, today we just released 17.5.10. So we will continue to iterate 17.5 throughout the entire life of the XG85s and 105s. You can absolutely reach out to your team. Now would be a great time to take advantage if you are looking at an upgrade for those appliances with the 50% off promotion on there. Great time to go ahead and upgrade those devices to an 86 or a 106 or even into a 115 if you needed some additional capacity on there. All right, so that answers that one. I don't know if you're looking at the questions as well, Corinthia. Feel free to grab a couple and.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know where you stopped off.
Anyone that's in there that's still active, I have not gotten to those yet. These are all the ones I have not answered yet. So if we want to start from the top and just run through them real quick.
I'll do, okay. There's one around, is user agent required for TLS 1.3? There is no requirement for user agent for TLS 1.3. And is STAS still used for mapping identities to traffic? Yes, STAS is still used to identify. Mentioned was 2 MFRS support for TLS 1.3. So who's the other one? We can't really talk about our competition here on the Sophos call, but
you guys have Google. You can look that up.
And does the endpoint still require the CA to be installed on for the SSL inspection? We already addressed that. So will these new DPI engine fastpath be available? Okay, you already addressed it, so I'm just kicking from the top.
So we do have another one on here, again, going back to this whole CA on there. Did you say my GoDaddy certificate will not work for SSL decryption and inspection? That is correct. You cannot. GoDaddy is not going to give you, so this is not just an SSL certificate. Remember, being the man in the middle, we are decrypting, analyzing that data that's in there, and then re-encrypting it with our CA or whatever CA that you have provided on the box. GoDaddy is not going to give you their CA to re-encrypt the website. So you can either use the one that's on the XG firewall itself, or if you have a Microsoft CA on-premise, you can utilize that.
Yep. And can I get a copy of the PowerPoint? So probably.
Absolutely, we will have PowerPoint. We'll send out the PowerPoint after this. I'll put it all together into a nice, neat email with a follow-up. I'm also going to include, because there's been a lot of questions on sizing of the XG firewall. We will eventually have a brand new sizing guide out publicly facing for our partners. Right now, your local SEs, your local sales engineers, have access to an internal only document. They can assist you with sizing an XG firewall. We also have an XG firewall sizing desk. Corinthia, I don't know if you know if that's public facing to partners or if they have to go through their SE in order to get to that?
It has to relate through SEs to get to that.
Okay.
So the sizing list has to go to SEs. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, definitely, stay in touch with your local SE on there. If you have something that's more complicated and or you just need additional insight on if this is the right appliance for this, you want to make sure you're not undersizing or way oversizing on there. Reach out to your local sales engineer. They'd be happy to work with you, happy to get you over to the sizing desk to make sure that we are getting you into the correct appliance. All of the metrics on our website, sophos.com, are on there. They are not updated just yet for version 18, but we will be working on that very quickly. All right, with that, we'll keep a lot of these questions off to the end. I'll do my best to go through and answer the rest of them.
Sure. Thanks, Steve. There's one more question I'd like to answer. So, are there plans to merge IPv4 and V6 firewall rules? A single rule can not get the rest of the question. Single rules can set be up to apply V6, V4, and V6. The answer to the question is no, not that I know of. We don't have anything of that sort in the roadmap. So how do we push the Sophos certificates to workstations in a non-domain environment? So that's another good question. So we have multiple RMM tools. So probably Steve, you can chip in here if there are any tools that you know of that can push certificates out to a non-domain environment.
Yeah, I mean, with a non-domain environment, you are going to be limited to, again, this is mainly MSPs on there. You're going to have your RMM tools, ConnectWise, Kaseyo, Data RMM. Those will have options. Some of them may be built in to push out those CA certificates. You can also, write a script and have that deployed in through an automated session that way as well. So there are multiple methods to get it out there if you do not have a domain. We are working on another option. It's not in there just yet, and Kranti, I don't know if you have any information on that. It's probably more Ashek to bring that CA and have it processed through the endpoint as well. So if you are utilizing synchronized security, you will in the future be able to go in, have the actual endpoint bring that certificate in from the firewall. That way you won't have to go through and deploy that. So again, adding additional benefits around synchronized security.
That is correct. So that's part of a roadmap. We don't have a date or any ETA on that feature set. So that's part of our vision. There's one question which I would love to answer here. The whole certificate thing will lead us to use the feature since it will annoy users, especially non-company owned machines. Then that's the whole reason why we have a dedicated SSL TLS rule set, so you can exclude those machines by MAC addresses or IP addresses, so they don't have to go through. Even if there is non-company owned devices, they can be excluded to form a separate zone, and you can have a separate wireless which can go through authentication and stuff like that. So there are multiple ways to address that concern. So once we're done with the questions, so we can take these questions towards the end if we have time, but I wanted to cover the most exciting part of the entire V18, the threat intelligence reporting. So with version 18, we are bringing in the threat intelligence report that is combined, that is going to work alongside the sandbox. So I've just triggered one sandbox, or you all are familiar with the sandboxing or Sandstorm inside XG Firewall. Now we've actually added the threat intelligence report, that same level of the artificial intelligence that goes into our endpoint and the machine learning model is also applied to the XG Firewall. In this example here, when a file is being downloaded and if the XG Firewall thinks that file is suspicious and it needs to be analyzed by the sandbox, now instead of just getting a verdict based on sandbox, it also submits that to our machine learning model. And in this example, you can see the machine learning model already rendered a verdict while the sandbox, the Sandstorm analysis is in progress here. So this is just how quick the XG Firewall can now get a verdict on the Sandstorm submitted file. And this works for both web and email as well. So let's just go through what kind of, I'm not sure if you guys have seen this before, but this is something we've been trying to elevate in the V18. So in this example, even those files which are scanned by the XG Firewall local AV engine is also, you can also see the summary of how the XG Firewall came to a verdict that it's a malicious. So this example, it's a lucky ransomware, and it does. We have two analyses it does. So we have a sandstorm detonation, and also we have the machine learning analysis as well. The machine learning analysis, what it does, it actually checks against millions of known good and known malware samples, and based on that, it can actually render a verdict. And it actually does a file feature analysis, and also it looks at some structural analysis and of that file that's being inspected, and based on that, it can actually render a verdict based on the machine learning model. Now, at the same time, the Sandstorm also does like a runtime. It runs the whole file in our virtual environment. It actually checks all the malicious activity changes. It makes the memory, what kind of network connections it makes, and what kind of registry files it reads, and all these details, and it gives you screenshots of what that file does in the sandbox environment. So you can actually look at the process it touches, all the network activity it goes out to, and all the details. It gives like all the pre and post execution analysis of this particular file in the sandbox environment. So this is like a complete forensic, or you can call it as a firewall threat case, wherein we have our own endpoint threat case, and that's the power of using a threat intelligence reporting. It received a very significant upgrade in V18, and that's just one thing I wanted to focus on, and that is something it is enabled from the firewall rules here. In case if you guys have not seen this before or not aware of this, inside the web filtering, detect zero-day threats with Sandstorm is where you can actually see this enable this particular feature. And there is also a widget that has been there since V18, and also this is the same widget that will take you straight to the place where you can actually see different types of files are being analyzed in those files and the verdicts being released. So that should wrap up on what I need to present for today in V18 and these exciting features. So Steve, I'm more than happy to answer any more questions, or otherwise it's up to you. It's over to you.
Yeah, let's go through a couple more questions here, and then we're getting close to the top of the hour. I was wanting to touch on, maybe you can actually, if you have your Sophos Central brought up real quick, before we get into the questions, let's just briefly touch on the new Sophos Central version 2 management, which if you don't have it in your dashboard today, it will be in there. It is going to be slow rolled out to all of our Sophos Central users. It will be available by the end of the week. It adds a few components in there. This is still going to be at the Sophos Central admin level. So we do not have anything at the Sophos Central partner as of yet. We do have roadmap, but we are still working on other things, or that team is still working on other components on there before we can get those features into the partner dashboard. But as Karanthi is showing here on the screen, the firewall section, so if you were on the early access, you would have noticed that you had firewalls and then firewall groups. Firewall groups has now replaced the firewall section in the new and the latest version on there. These grouped options allow you to go in and group firewalls together that will have the same management policy applied to them. So you can now go in, grab a firewall, drag it over, and automatically have the policies from this group apply to that particular firewall. Karanthi just added one in there, and if that one was online, we can go into the task queue and actually see the process of that particular firewall getting onboarded inside of that policy.
And Steve, let me add to that. So this is the group policy management is also something that is close to what you see on your SFM or CM. So you can push your policies, your web intrusions, and host objects. Pretty much everything that can be done from your firewall manager can also be done from here. And the most exciting thing is also outside the central management is also the reporting is also ported over to the firewalls in central. So one of the firewalls here with the reports here, you can just that gives you like a tree level of visibility to the network, what kind of resources is being consumed in the firewall, the security side, and also the policy side as well. So you can see that in here, So we have the heartbeats detections and also ATP, any intrusion attacks, and also some other data surrounding the web and app control. So if I go to the reports, the cool part of these reports are they're not sitting in your on-prem, they're on the cloud here, and you can have multiple, and there's a tooltip which we'll be fixing it, and there is you can customize your graph based on these components or this criteria. So if I want to use not by application but by category, I can just revisit this whole graph here. And again, I can do multiple filter queries by the same components that I have on the top. So I can add a category, and I can just ask, okay, about streaming media. And I'll update it, and that'll actually update the streaming media category in this list. So if I type the spelling right in here, but yeah, so this is just how you can build a filter query. Now, I didn't take it, but it's that's how it works. Now, the web usage here is quite the same as how you can customize your graphs, and my favorite style is just that displays the most amount of data here. And you can see the tooltip here gives like useful information. At the same time, you can also customize your x-axis and y-axis here as well. And that's and also your firewall ATP and IPS events. So you can also build, select time and date range as well. So in this example, let me just go to a week back, and update if I have any IPS alerts here. And yeah, there are a bunch of IPS alerts. I can change it. So this is still a version 1 of the central firewall reporting. So we'll still have a lot of roadmap to execute on this one. And yeah, if you guys wanted to test this out, so feel free. So yeah, Steve, if you want to add anything, please feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about this is the new central firewall reporting that Granthi is showing here. This is out today for any firewall that is running version 18 and your Sophos Central has been upgraded into version 2. By Monday of next week, I've been assured that everybody's will be upgraded, so you'll have access to this dashboard here, same look that you see on Granthi's screen. Definitely good to go ahead and get this set up. We'll have a free 7 days of reporting inside of Sophos Central. There will be a premium edition coming out for the Sophos Central reporting, which will allow you to, and I'm not quite sure exactly how they're doing it. I've heard data sizes as far as number of gigs. You can purchase blocks of gigs that you're going to be storing for that customer, but allow you to have retention. So if you're needing 6 months of retention, 12 months of log retention on there for the reporting, but not only the reporting on here, but if you take a look off to the side on the reports, so when Granthi had that up, there was also a spot in there for the firewall logs as well. So those logs are going to be stored on there as well. Now, we're not a SIM on there. This is bringing a lot of enhanced reporting on there. You still have your syslog capability directly on the XG firewall itself, but it does bring these logs right into that central dashboard, quick and easy for you. That way you can understand exactly what's going on, what happened. In regards to the firewall manager, so you've seen here that there is a shift. We are moving away from Central Firewall Manager and the Sophos Firewall Manager. I know there's been a few questions inside of the questions and answers on there. Version 18 will be able to connect to CFM and SFM, but it will not be able to utilize all the features for version 18. We have a plan to bring CFM and SFM to end of life. Those products will probably, as of the latest reports I've seen, go end of life March 31st of next year. So that means that we will no longer have CFM. SFM will still be an on-prem product. I don't know when the full end of life for that one. I don't know if it'll happen the same date, but everything is shifting to this new tool with Central Admin. This is definitely where I recommend putting all of your firewalls in there. Once you get them in there, it's much easier to manage them. It also doesn't require any WAN access to the firewall. So you can go in to the device access settings, turn off the HTTP for the web management to the internet. This is going to go ahead and use a token inside of there. When that firewall checks in, it's going to grab that and drag you into the firewall, single sign-on. So much easier process, much more secure. All right, with that, we're about 4 minutes from the top of the hour. We can definitely go over a little bit here. Just want to be mindful of everybody's time, but let's take a look at what other questions we have on here and see if we can get those answered for you guys while we're on the phone.
I'm actually
anything?
addressing them right there from the chat. So while you're speaking, so there are some questions which we can address.
Perfect. I'm just going to start at the top, and we'll run down some of these here that are a little more on the interesting side. PCI compliance scans. I know this is a big one that comes up all the time. Is there anything new around the PCI compliance scans when we're running site-to-site VPN tunnels? Is there anything that's been, I guess, done to address any failures that we might see from the outside when they are getting PCI compliance scanned?
The answer to the question is we haven't addressed anything that we know of, but from what I can see, that the PCI compliance scans don't see any failures when there is a site-to-site tunnel, unless you're using a weak ciphers across or weak authentication protocols across the site-to-site. So I don't see that failing in PCI compliance in some of the customer scenarios. If you have one scenario, please feel free to come forward and send and approach your local SE. We can address that.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, your local SEs are a great resource for everything, and if they cannot assist you on there, and it is something that does require support, they can get you into support and help you get you escalated. That way, you're not waiting around or dealing with level 1 if something you've already worked with somebody on. Real quick on here, Kranthi, going back to FastPath. FastPath is part of version 18, and that is going to be available not only on hardware, but virtual and software as well, correct?
That is correct, and also
okay.
cloud as well.
And cloud, yes. So yeah, it's not dependent on how you're deploying out the XG. You can have it with our hardware, your own hardware. You can deploy it in Azure or coming soon AWS. You can deploy it into VMware, Hyper-V. The FastPath technology is still going to be there for you.
Yep.
All right, let's go. Anything else you're seeing inside of here? I see a lot more certificate questions. I think we have answered certificate questions, hopefully as well as we can.
So what type of networks we want to deploy app inspection on? For instance, would we want to deploy it on a guest public networks? That's a question. It's a generic question. For instance, public and general networks, if this is properly segmented to not reach your production environment, I don't see a reason why you need to enable app control on the public segments, because we especially don't have control on the devices that are connecting to it. And if all you need to do is just keep them away from your production environment. So I would not recommend it, even though if there is some level of curiosity as to what's the trend on the public connections or on the public side of the networks are. So it's all up to the administrator. And what's the time frame on when a wireless survey is taken and all the required information is handed off to Sophos? What should your partner expect to get the AP configured back from Sophos?
So I didn't catch to get the AP back. So us configuring the AP for them? Is that what the question is?
I don't understand what the question is.
So with the wireless, just to cover wireless on there, the XG firewall can be used as a wireless manager. There's nothing that we can configure on there for you. It is inside of the XG firewall, just as it is today with version 17. You would bring that on your network. It would get an IP address and default gateway. It'll go and reach out to the XG firewall as it's passing that traffic. It'll pick it up, and then you can manage it inside of your XG firewall. If you're managing the APXs inside of Central, the process is a little different. Again, it does have to have internet access for the actual APX itself. You would then go into Sophos Central and add that access point, putting in the APX serial number into the system, which would then grab it and process it into your Sophos Central admin dashboard. So hopefully that covers that question there.
Yep, and will 17 plus support new management features in Sophos Central or just V18 and forward? So that's a question that we've been debating today. So so we kind of wanted to address Sophos Central just V18 and forward, because version 17 has to be upgraded to V18 at any given point, right? So so the answer to the question is just V18 forward.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely a discussion we had this morning. One question in here, and this is going to be for anybody who is on the early access program for XG Firewall version 18. Someone's asking if they've got currently installed 18 early access 3 refresh 1. It's now prompting them to install the XG 18 GA build 321. Is this a downgrade? That is an upgrade. So you're on early access at the moment. That's going to have you upgrade to the actual GA version of the firewall itself. So you definitely want to do that. You want to get off of the early access if you are currently running that.
Okay, so this one is to request CA to be installed for, I think we addressed that question.
So this is a good one on here, and I think this does get addressed with version 18. When using Duo or a similar service to Duo, that is now supported under version 18, correct? We do have the controls in place to extend out the delay while waiting for that radius authentication to come back.
That is absolutely right. So you can just go to the radius server, and there is a timeout capability where you can actually add timeout section. That's one of the limitations for not using the geo or multi-factor authentication with the XG firewall. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're using Duo Security and you're wanting to use that as your MFA via your Radius service, it is going to be through Radius service. It's not a direct integration. You're not going to see a Duo tag on our screen, but you can still have that prompt going through there. And that timeout is now supported, so we can extend that out and it doesn't fail before they actually get that push notification.
And there's another question which I would love to answer. So it's V18 support on AMD CPUs for those using their own hardware. So any x86 CPU is supported. That includes AMD and Intel. And V18 eventually support Let's Encrypt certs, and what kind of time frame could, I think I missed it. Where is it? CA, and what kind of time frame we expect to see it. So we currently don't have an answer to that question. We can take these questions all, look it up, and get back to you guys with the answers. This is a question to the product team, so which we don't have any insight into. Is there going to be new certification for V18? Yes, there is going to be new certification for V18. The certification has already been rolled out for internal. I'm not sure if this has been rolled out for external partners, but so we've been seeing some great progress on the certifications for V18 already underway.
Kranthi, while we're talking about certifications for V18, I know that was a question earlier for FIPS compliance. And I know that is something that we are actively pursuing. Do you have any updates surrounding that? I know it's not going to be an instant thing.
Yeah, we don't have, for FIPS validation is something that we don't have for this year, at least for this year. So we probably might, and it's not something that I wanted to, that you guys can quote me on. It's just part of what I'm hearing from inside. It's probably something we can take up next year.
Okay, I know it is an important component. It is something that gets brought up all the time. From what I've heard on there, it is something they are looking at and they are working on. I don't know, again, where the hangups on there. We can definitely find out some additional answers for you guys from the product teams on that, of where we actually stand with those components. Okay, we could probably spend, the list on questions on here is growing by the minute. We could probably spend the next hour on here. Kranthi, what's your time so far? Do you want to answer any more, or do you have another engagement after this?
Oh, I can answer some more questions. I can answer at least 10 questions from here. So is there any way to assign, is there a way to assign LDAP OU to automatically populate Sophos administrators? So, we've got a tough one here, and it's not possible yet. So with LDAP OU, automatically populate Sophos administrator is not possible, because with the Sophos administrator, you need to manually assign that user the administrative rights here from being a user to an administrator. That can only be done within the firewall. So that cannot be inherited from a group level. So that's something that you need to do it manually. So it's still the same in V18. There's no change in that. Any chance we can see anti-port scan feature added in V18?
Yeah, we get asked that one all the time. I know it's something that you guys ask for quite a bit. It was apparently a popular feature with SG Firewall. Karanthi, unless you've heard anything, I have not heard anything or seen that on a roadmap anywhere.
No, I haven't seen that either.
So one of the things that I
next-
don't know if you have any, and I'm pretty sure this is already supported, but the question is, will version 18 support Let's Crypt certs? This is just going to be, I'm sure, just standard SSL certificates on there. Now, again, they won't support a CA, but unless there's something, do you know of anything where Let's Encrypt won't be supported for SSO? You wouldn't be able to use their certs for anything incoming?
Today you can grab SSL Let's Encrypt, get a certificate signed. So we don't have the automatic process of automatically getting it signed from Let's Encrypt, but today you can generate a CSR and get a Let's Encrypt certificate signed and upload it to the XG firewall manually.
Right. So yeah, it is supported. It's just going to be a little more of a manual process.
And one other question that we get asked on a frequent basis: does the XG automatically exclude domains required for Office 365 if SSL inspection is enabled? The answer to the question is no, but we have a workaround for that. So I'm going to show that to you on my firewall because I've already implemented that. So I've got some hosts and services that I've already added. Here is, so one of our team members in engineering has created a Python script that can be run. If you run that script pointing towards your XG firewall, it automatically creates a range of IP addresses and the corresponding groups that can be, so that script takes the latest API from Microsoft and automatically creates these objects and hosts for you. So this is the most frequently asked questions that SEs come down to me because partners really like this to be excluded. So for now, we have this particular workaround that can be excluded. You can add the objects here, and this is something, once you run the Python script, it will give you the updated API or change the Microsoft made it to its servers. So we can give you out that Python script if you want to use it. It's on a GitHub, so we can give you the link for that.
Yeah, if you can get me that Python script, I'll put it in the follow-up email for everybody on there, if it's publicly available. Yeah,
and Sophos Connect, are they adding AD integration yet? And I'm the person who's eagerly waiting as much as the partner that asked the question. So we'd love to see, when they say AD integration, you meant AD group integration. So that's one of the biggest asks that I get asked every day. And we are looking at it for 18.05. From what I think, and again, it's not a planned thing, so we haven't yet underwent our planning call yet for our roadmap, but so that's something we're considering for 18.05. That's a possibility.
Okay.
And let's see what we have.
So one of the questions on here, which is definitely pertinent to version 18, and I'm pretty sure you already showed this, but we can bring up the rules and policies again. What are the major changes to firewall rules with version 18? So I think right here at the top, you guys can see pretty plainly that one of the major things that's happened with the firewall rules, it is now broken out into 3 different sections. So you've got your firewall rules, NAT rules have been broken out separately, and then you have your SSL and TLS inspection options on there as well. There are a couple of differences. So with version 17.5, when we're talking firewall rules, you had the option for a business class rule, you had your user/network rule. That has all been combined just into a firewall rule now. So on the firewall rule set there, Grant, if you click over, when you click on the add firewall rule, you will no longer get the option for a business firewall rule. It is just a brand new firewall rule. Now, when configuring DNAT, this was a little more complex, so they created a wizard in there for you. You can simply run through this wizard. It'll prompt you for all the information that you need in order to create that DNAT destination from the outside coming into your network rule, and then process it inside of the firewall rules and NAT rules for you automatically. So hopefully, definitely go inside of your partner portal when you're logging in. All of the version 18 training has been updated. If you are already 17.5 certified for the engineer and architect, make sure you take your Delta courses for both of those. That is going to be a good refresher on anything else inside of there, and then an update to all of the new rules and changes inside of XG version 18.
And also, if you guys want to look at the XG Firewall v18, the demo systems are upgraded to the v18, so you can just go look into that and look at the policies and how these work. So we've got the system up and running for you. So
a couple questions, again, going back to version 18 here. The first one, is there an easy way to get firewalls onto version 18? My early access upgrade was available for 17. So version 18 is available for GA right now. It is in a soft release, meaning that you're not going to see it get prompt inside of your actual XG firewall just yet. You can go into My Sophos, which you can get to from id.sophos.com, find your device and hit the download option. That's going to give you the .sig file, the signature file, which is going to be the firmware to allow you to upgrade to XG version 18. This is going to be a manual upload. We will start rolling this out to the XGs. It will start happening over the next couple of weeks, where you'll start seeing it populate inside of the XG firewall, prompting you to upgrade to version 18, and that it is now available. One of the other questions, and I don't know, Kranthi, if you have any insight on that as well, is there anything that you would do before you would upgrade a 17.5.9 firewall into version 18? Is there anything you would take a look at, or anything that you would need to change before upgrading?
I wouldn't think so. I don't think so, because the firewall, the NAT rules are automatically ported over to the new v18. So it's designed to not change anything in the 17.5 MR9 before we move over to the 18. I straight away upgraded my firewalls, my demo firewalls that I manage, and they all work just fine.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions on here. Will the firewall management set up VPN between the firewalls like CFM and SFM? The answer is not yet for CM. That is on a roadmap to bring more and more SD-WAN type features into the central management component. I know that is on the roadmap for CMv3, so that's going to be a feature that you guys will see hopefully here before the end of the year.
Yeah. So VPN orchestration is what another name we can call it as. So that's coming in CMv3. So okay, thanks.
Kranthi, do you have any details of, while we're talking about, all the things version 18? We're already in Azure. I know we are coming into AWS for the ability to have the XG firewall there. Do you have any details as to the roadmap for that process and when we will see
roadmap
that?
For Azure, you mean to say?
For AWS.
So for AWS, we've got a firewall up and running in AWS, for example. Let me just log on to one of my firewalls in AWS. So it's pretty much a single standalone firewall right now that sits in AWS. So we don't have any auto scaling or HA high availability in AWS yet. So it's part of our roadmap for AWS right now. So at this point, we only have one XG firewall image that runs in standalone mode.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any time frame on, is that available today?
I think it should be available in the first or second week of March. So it's currently available for internal only folks, and we should be able to. I'll need to check with Bill on that. So with on time frames, they said it's first week of March, but I don't have anything on email or anything like that.
Okay, perfect, great. One last question on here that I'm going to address, and then we can go ahead and wrap this up. Anything we don't get to on here, a lot of them we've talked about and gone over that are inside of here. The last one is the best way to remove a firewall from a CFM and add it to central admin. The good news here is you do not have to remove the firewall from CFM before adding it into central admin. Kranthi, if you would do me a favor and open up another tab and go to YouTube for me. And we're actually going to go to Sophos MSP Global.
All right, I'm just going to pause my screen for a little bit so just can not show the.
Too late, we already see everything.
Okay. So what do you want me to search for?
Sophos MSP Global.
All right, I'm just going to pause it here for a minute. All right, so there it is.
All right, so at the top of the screen here, you're going to have the Sophos MSP Global channel. I definitely recommend all of you subscribe to this. I post videos on there quite often. If you click into the MSP Global channel for me, Kranthi, they're right there at the top. And you'll have to pause Travis as soon as he comes up on that deep dive session right there. And if we scroll down, I believe it's the second column on there, we'll have XG Firewall. This is a great place for you guys to go and figure out how to get a firewall onto CM. So if it's an existing firewall, the way to get it onto the central management is setting up synchronized security. The fourth video over there is a quick 10-minute video on how to set up synchronized security inside of the central admin dashboard. If these are brand new firewalls out of the box that you're setting up for a customer, you can actually use the second video over there, which is going to be the onboarding of the XG firewall directly into the central management. No need to go ahead and set up a synchronized security user. You actually run through our zero touch, which is a light touch deployment right now. It will be zero touch in the future. But you'll run through a setup process on there. Make sure your firewall is upgraded either to 17.5.9 or version 18, and then plug the USB stick in that you download from that. It'll configure it with the base configuration on there. It'll connect it into Sophos Central for synchronized security and management. All you'll need to do is accept services. Again, that's going to be brand new firewalls out of the box only. Existing firewalls, you will have to go the route of the synchronized security component on there. All right, with that, if you don't mind, Kranthi, I'm going to share my screen out real quick just to cover the promotion one last time on here. Make sure everybody understands.
I'll be answering the questions while you do it.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. So let me. And it's thinking about it. Come on, go to webinar. You can do it. Or maybe you can't. All right, pending my screen is ever going to be shared out here. Okay, just to remind everybody, we do have a promotion running from now until March 27th, 50% off XG Firewall hardware and APX hardware and their subscriptions, if that's going to be the term subscriptions on there, for orders $5,000 or more. So your standard registered deal of $5,000, you get an extra 10 points of margin on there. What you're going to do to take advantage of this promotion is reach out to your MSP team. We have these 3 contact email addresses for you: East MSP, Central MSP, and West MSP at sophos.com. Reach out to those teams, let them know you want to take advantage of that promotion. They will work on you getting you the quotes and the details out. If there's any other questions that you guys have, feel free to send an email into that team as well if it's anything specific to Sophos MSP. If it's something specific and you need a little more detail, a little more clarification, they'd be happy to send that over to myself. I can loop myself and Kranthi in as well. We will go through and answer as many questions as we can. And there will also be a follow-up to this as well. We will send out a follow-up email with the recording link on there as well to our Sophos MSP Global page. I will also include all of the links that you need as well for any of the GitHubs on there for the Python scripts, as well as some upgrade guides for the XG Firewall as well. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. This definitely went a little bit over the hour. Hope you guys enjoyed the content on here, and we will see you on the next one. You all have a great rest of your week. Thanks.